Welcome to American Intelligence Media. I'm your host, Thomas Paine, and I'm with Michael McKibben tonight, and it's amazing because he's brought us yet another fantastic breaking story on something that we together actually started some time ago and brought to the fore thanks to Phil McConnell and Abel Danger and all those people. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Thomas. Great to be with you.
It's always great talking with you because, once we thought that we were smart and we got ahead of everybody, then you come along and set your hunting dogs on the task, and it's just amazing how you go further. We ran into dead ends when we considered the topic that we're talking about tonight, the Senior Executive Service, started in 1978 during the Carter administration by Phil McConnell's sister, Christine Marcy. And she was at the head of creating a bunch of crazy stuff. And so we brought this to the fore and made sure that it got out, and it went everywhere, as you well know, Michael. This was a huge thing because finally people could put their finger on the shadow government. And we even posted a document that named these people. But now you and your researchers have gone far beyond the beyond and gone even further than that to find out that not only of these 9,100 senior executive service people who are the buffer in between presidential appointees, and basically now because of your research, we see that even the chief of staff, John Podesta, was a senior executive service. All these people at these top levels didn't even have to go through any prerequisites. They get paid more than anybody. They got appointed by Obama, 8 of the 9,000 of them, and you now find out and got the documents and got the goods on the fact that no one can even fire them. Can you tell us how that works, Michael?
Well, one of the things that I was shocked by when you first told me about this group is that it's so large and that I had never heard of it. And I asked around with a lot of smart people in and around Columbus. Nobody had heard of this group called the Senior Executive Service. And I really didn't focus on it because I read your piece and I read what Phil McConnell wrote about it and said, well, there's definitely something here, but we didn't have time to focus on it at the time. But the more I have looked into the references that you published, the deeper this rabbit hole went, to the point where it explains so much about how invasive this group is like an invasive species that takes over a lake and just eventually just kills off all other types of fish or wildlife. And it's so large. We're talking about 7, 8, 9,000 people that have basically infiltrated every phase of the senior executives of every agency in our country. And these people are not beholden to anyone that we elect. They're not even beholden to the people that the president appoints to run these agencies. They have their own organization system. They have their own budgets. They have all their own rules that are very self-serving. They've even written policies and procedures that say that they can't even be fired by the president. And so as we dug deeper into this, from the documents that you provided, we found the mother lode. And that mother lode is a list that they have to, by law, publish every 4 years that explains the breadth of their involvement in every agency. And now there are lots of holes in the disclosure because there's a lot of people's names that they withhold, but there are plenty that they don't withhold. And as we started digging into these documents, and we went back through the Federal Registry, we got stuck in the year 2000 because the subsequent to the year 2000, there were complete documents. They were 300 or 400 pages long, and they had all the names all collected. But in the year 2000, the 400-page document was broken up into about 175 files, and they were all listed separately in separate little PDF files. So we had some people who started digging into those files. We discovered that each one of them was passworded and blocked from any kind of normal ability to compile the documents into a single file. So therefore, they weren't very searchable. And to cut a long story short, we had a person who spent over a day figuring out how to put that document together. And so that the year 2000 document is searchable. Now, this is the document that was published while Bill Clinton was still president. And there were some interesting names on this document. Now, when you talk about the Senior Executive Service, remember, we're talking about an independent group that's not even accountable to the department heads or the president. So I'm not sure what they're doing, and I'll talk about that from the standpoint of organizational development in a minute. But we found some interesting names in the year 2000 that were members of the Senior Executive Service. Probably the most notable one was Michael Horowitz, the current Inspector General of the Justice Department. He was a member of the Senior Executive Service in the year 2000. And in the Treasury Department, we found two very interesting names that worked for Larry Summers. One was Sheryl Sandberg, and the other was Marnie Levine. And I will bring you to the current time and point out that Sheryl Sandberg is the Chief Operating Officer of Facebook, and that Marnie L. Levine, who has the last name now Deutsch, is the Chief Operating Officer at Instagram. So what we see, and this document further proves, is this intent to weaponize our government and to weaponize our technology, which these people subsequently stole, has its organizational roots in this Senior Executive Service.
And I believe you said out of the 58 or so agencies, 54 of them are, in fact, led by Senior Executive Service members. And by your new list, which, by the way, when we went to look for these things, we ran up against walls. So your hunting dogs are far superior to even the conclave. So I have to salute you for that, because we ran up against so many walls and blocks and, as you say, passwords and just discombobulation, so that there are actually 10 different categories of being an SES member, and you get paid. Starting pay is the highest pay that somebody makes in the government who's gone all the way through the GS, the general schedule, up to 15, 1 through 15. They start at 15 and above in most cases, because they are considered to be professional executives who have come to save the day in the government, who the government bends over backwards for, so that they can pay them whatever, so that they don't have to even report whether they have a criminal record. They automatically get a top secret security clearance because they're going to work in all these agencies. They rotate around. They may not be, and usually are not, even executives in the area that they are now in control of. Most of them are appointed, especially now since Obama's time, because as you pointed out, from 2000 on, Obama's executive order expanded the Senior Executive Service so they couldn't even be fired, so that they were almost all independent. They all get a yearly raises from a review board of their subordinates. So the subordinates give them raises, and they can't be fired. And once they're appointed, they keep the job as long as they want. In the interview, they don't have to say whether they have a criminal background, whether they were born, whether they're Putin's uncle. Nothing. These people are given exceptions to go straight to the top, to be in control, and even Trump's appointments, like Jeff Sessions, has to answer, because Jeff Sessions is new to the Department of Justice in that job, has to answer to someone in between who is a buffer running interference, who is an Obamite, because 8,000 of the 9,000 of the current SES members are Obama appointees, or people that Obama moved up through their positions. But when they do, they basically make a vow, and that vow is to be the shadow government, to keep the status quo, to keep the bureaucratic career people in position. And when they need to have somebody like a Sheryl Sandberg or a Larry or a John Podesta or a Michael Horowitz move into one of these stupid low-paying government jobs? Well, they get paid as much or more than the president. Nobody knows how much they're paid.
Right.
There's a group that reviews how much they're going to pay them and gives them a yearly bonus, and then they get presidential awards and all these mysterious things. Nobody what that means. That's money. So these people,
they don't even disclose the amounts that they receive. The cells in those spreadsheets are empty where it talks about their amount of pay.
There is no limit to what they can be paid. But let me just point something out. Then, under what we have understood and what you have brought to light, I would assume that Robert Mueller is currently a temporary SES member, a senior executive service member. Now, you have pointed out recently, which was another big breaking news for us, that these special counsels are actually not following a law anymore. They're following a regulation, and that the Mueller investigation, because of its nature and what Obama did to expanding the special counsel, what Janet Reno did to expand the special counsel into being a regulation that was open for the elites to have a star chamber or a kangaroo court anytime they needed one, was really an opportunity for them to be able to spend the amount that's allowed. Robert Mueller may spend $100 million a year on this special investigation because he is more than likely a senior executive service member, and it's carte blanche for these people. These people make more than the president. And by the way, their starting salary is generally the salary. Their starting base salary is the salary of the vice president of the United States of America. Is that not shocking?
Yes, it is. And the money issue is huge because we're paying these people their salaries, and yet there's no transparency in this report. These reports are voluminous, by the way, and they are what we notice with bureaucrats is they do one of things to avoid transparency. Either they hide it, or in this case, they push out so much paperwork, and as we just discovered, it's fragmented and the files are hard to read and hard to put together. They either dump it on you so you don't want to take the time to look at it, or they hide it. And the money issue aside, prior to starting software, I was in organizational development, and I did a lot of work with senior teams in companies to deal with vision, goal setting, problem solving, time management, those kinds of things. And so maybe I come at this from a little different viewpoint. I see the money issue, and that's scandalous and that's offensive, actually. But from the standpoint of organizational development, here's the issue I have with the senior executive service. They give lip service to the idea that they're an impartial body and that they should maintain an aloofness over the current administration, and they act like they're some sort of accountability body, but it couldn't be anything further from the truth. What's obvious here is that there's a hidden agenda. There's somebody driving the senior executive service, and it appears at this time that that's parked about 2 miles down from the White House in that bunker that Barack Obama built with Valerie Jarrett. But that aside, when you work with a management group or a company, one of the things that's very important if you're going to have a successful organization is that the senior management of that organization has to be all pulling in the same direction. Otherwise, you've got people pulling left, pulling right, and the CEO can't get anything done. And so the scandalous aspect of this senior executive service, which very few people have even heard of, is that it appears to be put in place specifically to stop any kind of effectiveness within the elected group of people that the people put in place. And it's apparent with our current president that these people are pulling in another direction. And so from the standpoint of organizational development, as far as I can see, this group needs to go away. because there's no way our elected president can do his job with these people. They're all saboteurs. It's obvious they're all saboteurs. And they've all organized themselves to be saboteurs.
Exactly. You're so right, Michael. And what you pointed out in terms of organization, the thing that I really think is stupid and demonstrates that the entire SES is an oxymoron that should come to an end instantaneously, because they're not doing any work. If we named all these people, well, we've looked at the list. We've looked at the list. You only know a couple of these people who've ever come into public light, and yet they control the government, okay? And what do? They rotate from job to job that they are incompetent in. Why would they do that? Their entire intent was to bring experts, executives in the field, in corporate industry, into the government, and to say, oh, well, you are so much more superior than we are. We're going to listen to your advice as an executive because you can just zoom in and you can tell us what's going on, and we're going to pay you the big bucks more than the President of the United States. We're going to pay you taxpayer dollars the amount that you demand to be paid. What do you think we were paying Rex Tillerson? I'm wondering if he was SES. When it comes down to it, the head of these agencies are all SES from the list that you gave, or many of the agencies, and the other ones are so hidden, as you say, who knows? So who's being paid those bigger rates, those bigger numbers? Those would be the true insiders who are staying forever, like a Rod Rosenstein, who probably is SES. Why? Because he knows the routine. He knows they rotate. What did Mueller do? Rotate. Department of Justice, FBI, Attorney General, rotate.
Let's talk about the executive order that Barack Obama wrote on December 1st of 2015, where the name of it was essentially enhancing the effectiveness of the senior executive service. He actually wrote an executive order, which, as far as I can tell, is still in place because they've got references to reorganizing their operations that go well into 2018, the end of the year, with many of the key agencies that are causing all of the problems right now. And in that executive order, it just waxed eloquent on the idea that he was really encouraging these senior executives to rotate and move from agency to agency so that they could gain experience and share that experience broadly across all groups. And as best I can tell, this was the organizing executive order for Barack Obama's army that's in existence right now.
I'd have to totally agree, because in 2015 and 16, he reorganized it at the top levels in the agencies he needed done first. And then he gave orders in this executive order to continue in 17 and 18 to take over other departments he didn't consider to be such a high priority. In other words, it was marching orders up through 2018 to get this army, this shadow government, which certainly does serve the deep state and is completely unconstitutional, it's illegal, it goes against almost every single government regulation. You pointed out they ignore dozens of things that you should be filing to get a job at McDonald's. They don't even have to file to become the head of an intelligence agency. That was in Barack Obama's order, by the way. It was in order to streamline the applications and not discourage people from filing to be a part of the agency. We're going to allow you to waive the need to fill out the voluminous forms we have for security and for your background, and they were going to streamline the process in order to get people to apply. They streamlined it so much they invited Pakistani nationals to come in and take over the United States Congress under Pelosi's direction, that all the Democrats and the DCCC had to connect to Imran Awan, who was stealing everything. They didn't do a background check on him, or they would have found that he's an extortionist, that so many crimes he'd already committed. And so what was that? That was probably the expedited senior executive service.
Right. After that executive order, I'm sure that they just did whatever they wanted and made sure that none of the difficult parts of people's backgrounds ever came to light.
They wouldn't even ask them, as I made a joke earlier, if they were Putin's uncle. No, you could be directly from Russia. You could be a criminal. You could have had a previous top secret security clearance, but you're a spy and it was revoked, and have murdered a few people, and now you're out on, probation and whatever else, and you can apply for this job. No one would ever know, because you don't have to turn in anything to get one of these jobs. You just have to get a little wink from Barack Obama, and 8,000 of them are his soldiers in the shadow government. The SES is the shadow government.
So, Thomas, how do we fix this?
Well, since they don't do anything, Trump needs to fire them all. Some months ago, there was 33,000 federal employees jobs. 16,000 of them just simply weren't filled, and he let them slide. And then the others were people who quit or left. Guess what? 33,000 gone? Nobody noticed.
Right.
They weren't doing anything. You could fire the entire senior executive service, and no one would notice. What they do is they stand in between a presidential appointment and that presidential appointment getting anything done. That's all they do. They rotate around.
That's obvious.
And the reason they can fill any position that comes open because they're all cross-trained. And let's say I'm the second in charge of the Treasury, and I have no experience in that area, just like Mueller and Comey were in HSBC as their lead lawyers, and they have no experience in banking whatsoever. Then they go out and they're in a hedge fund, and they make tens of millions of dollars. They know nothing about that. What are they? They're insider traders. That's all they are.
Right.
All these different groups are insiders.
That's the other obvious benefit of being in this group is you're the insider. So therefore, I am sure all of these people have tremendous investment portfolios where they get the insider information, because these people define policy for the government or influence policy for the government. So they always know what's going down before it happens, and so therefore they can invest in this or that or the other company and make sure that they all become investing geniuses, while the rest of us, use your metaphor,
well, how about
get screwed?
Yeah, exactly. How about I wonder how John McCain's Raytheon investments are going. I wonder how Comey's investments in Lockheed Martin are going. When he went to Lockheed Martin as their chief counsel, they were being charged with missing, literally over about 10-year period, trillions of dollars. They ended up getting a few $1 million fine because he was there. And then he left there, and then he went to, well, let's not get into that. The point is insider trading is what it's all about. And as I will always say, most of these people have offshore accounts, and they are being paid. They do not take government salaries. Do you think a John McCain is going to take a senator's salary knowing that next to him, a person who does nothing in the SES makes more money than he does? He's going to get his payoff, isn't he, that John McCain or anybody else just like him?
Yeah, there's another dynamic here that you pointed us to with some of your contacts that said that if somebody is employed by the SES, that if somebody working in the regular federal government wants to go work for the SES, somehow they lose their benefits?
You lose your benefit, you lose everything. They do not want, and they say career professionals rise up to these SES positions unless there's no one there. Or if they do, they must change from being a career professional to being an SES member. Or let's remember, they have a number of different names. They're EX members, ES members, TL members, SES members, ESS members. Every one of these different agencies not everyone. There's about 10 different groups for the 54 agencies that they control. So if you're in one of those groups and you want to rise up to get one of these positions, forget it. You have to give up everything you built up to that time, and you have to basically throw the dice. And if you get fired, or if there's some political whatever, or I don't know how these people can get fired, because they don't really get fired. They leave probably.
Well, think about it. It's pretty clever. What they've done is they've built incentives into this thing, or disincentives, that will prevent probably well-meaning career federal people from wanting to go to this group. So this, in effect, they're building their own little private army that is insulated from the rest of the government.
And yes, correct. And it's so pathetic that they have their own little unions. So the SES has their little union, and they get together and they make all these plans. They even have their own flag. Why
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. And then they have the ES. They lied to you in all the documents. When we studied it first, we said, oh, wait, SES only exists in these agencies. They don't exist in the DOJ and the FBI and the CIA. Well, that makes sense, because how could you have someone who didn't know anything about law enforcement come and be in charge of Christopher Wray? Let's say Christopher Wray was an outsider, the new head of the FBI.
Right.
Let's say he was just
Well, there are plenty
Pompeo.
There are plenty of SES people inside all of those agencies. Maybe not the head, but they're definitely in the top echelon.
Well, let's say that the person appointed to the head of the FBI has never done that before. He's going to have an SES member who tells him what he can and cannot do, period.
Right.
And so the political appointee who is supposed to be carrying out the wishes of the present executive administration will be stopped by someone who's been appointed by Obama, and as you call them, Obama's foot soldiers. Oh, yes, and are they being controlled by the bunker down the street where Valerie Jarrett is still surrounded by more Secret Service than Michelle Obama is? Why was Valerie Jarrett always surrounded by more Secret Service than anyone but the president? Because she's a mobster. She worked for the Daily Mob in Chicago, and that's where Michelle Obama worked. That's where Barack Obama worked. People seem to have forgotten these things. The Chicago mob came to D.C. They're now in the bunker. Yes, the U.S. Digital Service has tracked everything into them. And yes, they get the presidential intelligence community wrap-up each day, which we know is a complete scam from what we have heard that has happened with it. But the point is, Trump isn't getting his intelligence from those people because they can't be trusted. But all of that stuff is still going to Obama, who I don't think has ever been in that. I think that's his either fifth or sixth house that we're paying for, $4.5 million a year for each house. So it can be secure, though. We have never seen him step into that house. That's where Valerie Jarrett lives with her, as you say, in the bunker. And the resistance, those are 33 foot soldiers of the OFS. That's his other group. So this is the inside group. Now, yes, since Carter's time, and we know the people who were appointed to the SES in the beginning, they were top dogs from industry, came in, gave good help, didn't even take any money, and left. But that set up the opportunity to create a corporate shadow government, which is only controlled by the little unions that control these groups that are literally outside of the government. They don't even operate under government rules. And these are the people who are the buffers for all the political appointees, as well as the fact that many agencies, the top dogs in that agency, are all SES members.
So I have a question for you. Why do you think Congress has never said a peep about the SES? Why aren't they informing the American people about this? It's essentially a saboteur of our country.
Everyone in Washington, D.C. is a huckster. And if they aren't, they leave soon. They are con men. They're all greedy, getting their piece of the pie. The reason they don't turn them in is because it's just another corrupt system. That's the same corporate corruption that pays them in their offshore accounts or pays them through their lobbying, pays them to run for political office, which should be illegal, by the way. And then they know that the people who have set this up are who? These are the criminals from the White House. Daddy Bush, Baby Bush, Wild Bill Clinton.
So what you're saying,
Obama.
what you're saying is, I think that the SES is the corrupt grease that greases the skids throughout Washington.
This is why Hillary never gets convicted. This is why Bill doesn't get convicted. This is why the Congress passes Mueller through or Comey through or Christopher Wray through, knowing that they are outright criminals. Yes.
Yeah.
They absolutely know this. If they think for 1 second that we can look at the news and derive this ourselves through sheer deductive logic and that we don't know that they know, then that just shows how stupid they think we are.
Right.
And shame on us that we don't know.
Well, it was hiding in plain sight. I mean, the documents are there. They were just very difficult to sort through. So back to the organizational issue. It seems to me we need to ask President Trump to stop the SCS now, take away all their money, defund it. A lot of people are going to have to leave Washington, and let's start letting the political appointees hire the people that are going to help him pull in the direction of the vision that we elected him for.
Yes, yes, and yes, and as Tyler would say, just let them all go.
Right.
That's it. One day to the next, let them go. We won't even notice them gone.
True.
But here's what I always say. Whether it's the Federal Reserve, whether it's the central banks, whether it's the New York Stock Exchange, first thing, seize their assets, assess what the situation is. In other words, do a complete audit, and then take what you want. And if there's anything left, give it back to them and let them realize that they're lucky they're not going to be charged for their crimes. Now, that's easy to do with the Fed. We don't owe them a single dime. It's easy to do with the stock market. It's easy to do with MERS, the Mortgage Exchange Registry System. It's easy to do with a lot of these systems. And so we keep saying to Trump, it's easy. And what does Trump do? He makes it easier than easy. He says to North Korea, I know the routine. I've been watching this all my life. I'm not stupid. Yes, you say you're at war. You're going to go at war with us. You are going to bomb us. We give you money. And you say you're not going to, and then you use it to build up missiles to say you're going to bomb us, so we give you money. And so Clinton and Obama continue to give $4.5 billion to North Korea to build his missile system. We built it for them. And anyone who doesn't know this is just not looking at history. We know exactly where the guidance systems came from. We know where the missiles came from. We know where the uranium came from. We're the ones who broke that story. TLI. That's where the uranium came from. Paducah, Kentucky. Through Tinam, went straight to North Korea. We have the registry that shows that they left the country through Canada.
By the way, on the nuclear regulatory side, I would say roughly 75% of the staff, executive staff in those areas, was SES.
You mean Uranium One? You mean the Clinton Foundation?
I didn't say that.
You mean the Clinton?
That was before the.
Yes, but this is where the money went, right?
Right.
And so these people, literally, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission gave, through Hillary Clinton and Obama, $400 million to build a plutonium downblending facility in Russia. At the same time that we spent billions to create the Eunice, New Mexico uranium enrichment facility so that Russia could run our uranium through it and cheat and take it out to other countries and sell it to us at a higher price. And this is all Mueller. When you say Uranium One, you say Mueller. Mueller delivered the yellow cake uranium to Putin so he'd go for the deal. This is what we're dealing with. And let's remember, he's going to be some form of SES. He's a temporary employee. He has $100 million a year to spend. No one's watching over him. We know that at the same time that they changed the law, that the way that they changed the law with Janet Reno changing the special counsel, they did the same thing for SES. You can't fire these guys, even if you want to. If you fired them, they'd still be paid.
So the only way anybody should do business with the government in the future is to make sure there aren't any SES executives involved with these contract negotiations, because otherwise it's all rigged.
It's completely rigged. And so when people go on and on and on about deep state, that doesn't help. Name who they are. Name their mechanism. Show the government documents that back it up, and then demand that anyone with any morality end this now.
Right.
We don't need a moratorium on SES. We need Trump to do what he's done before and just let it fade away. Don't even address it. Rewrite the executive order. which, as you point out, is coming up. It should be renewed, and if it isn't renewed, then SES doesn't have its power. No, write an executive order saying, bye-bye SES, or I just restructure it so that the president has complete control over it. Let's just go over some of these things.
I really don't think restructuring will work. I think that's built on such a corrupt moral foundation that restructuring would be a waste of time.
I totally agree, because their review boards, totally rigged. Totally, right. Everything about SES is rigged. And it's rigged corrupt to political appointees. In other words, I bring my mob from Chicago, my Rahm Emanuel, my Michelle Obama, my Valerie Jarrett, my whole Chicago mob. I appoint them in SES positions. Like, look at John Podesta was SES.
Right.
How much more corrupt could anybody possibly be on the face of the earth than John Podesta? SES. Why? He didn't want to be limited by his pay. Look at the money he had to give up from lobbying for Russia. Remember, his brother continued to lobby for Uranium One 114 times. He visited the Obama White House, all to earn money through the Podesta brothers, through Ukraine, through Russia. Absolute collusion, and we're not looking at any of that. And so I get a little bit upset about these things. So SES simply needs to end.
Yeah,
just like the president just did with Broadcom and Qualcomm. He took it right up to the end, and then he took a real serious look at it and said, no, this is the Chinese trying to act like they aren't really the Singapore company and brokers behind Broadcom. That's a big fat lie.
I was trying to come up with a metaphor. I'm still struggling on what I saw today. And if I just use a construction metaphor, it's like getting a batch of bricks to put on a building and realizing that 75% of them are going to crumble in 2 years. I mean, the level of infiltration of this, it's like a cancer. And I just don't see how it can be reformed or why we need it.
Well, let's just do it for instance here, Michael. I work as a nuclear regulatory dude, and my bosses are all SES. And I know none of them know a neutron from an electron, and yet they're all on the take, and they're all rotating in and out. Do you think I'm going to go to one of them and say, hey, Hillary Clinton's taking millions of dollars from Tenam? I don't think so. You'd be fired. No matter what department you're in, you'd be fired if you want to be a whistleblower or anyone telling the truth. So then they ask, how do they have so many people in compliance with them? How do they co-opt these people? These people are scared to death of being fired. But not only fired, hunted down like a dog, and you know what happens to people who turn against the government.
And because they've hidden it so long, they're in silence, so they realize that any kind of disclosure on their part would immediately point to them, so that guarantees the silence. Right.
I think that if we ever really got the full list, and you'll never see the full list, of all the Obama SES members, you would be shocked. Because those criminals don't come over and work for government salaries. Ask yourself the question, okay? Here's the question. We know that each year that either Mueller or Comey worked for HSBC, they made a minimum of $10 million a year. And then after, again, both of them, both times that they worked at HSBC was under investigation. They got huge indictments. They were supposed to have huge payments to make. Of course, nobody ever goes to jail. They just make a payment. It's called the cost of doing business. And then guess what? Comey and Mueller gets them out of it. They only have to pay a few million after ripping off hundreds of billions. And then Comey gets a really big bonus. Isn't that great? And then he moves on to the next job, whether it be Mellon Optima, or whether it be Bridgewater, or whether it be Lockheed Martin. These guys all go through these different places playing musical chairs.
Isn't it amazing how cavalier they act related to their legal exposure?
Oh, they have that down, don't they? But you see, you and I, we have to somehow figure out a way to get Trump to redo the entire judiciary system, because here's the deal. Whoever the case gets assigned to, whoever assigns it knows the outcome at the moment of assignment, period.
Right.
If it's a federal case, period.
Right.
And that's why a Mueller investigation, we were able to predict it before it started. And then we predicted what would happen after it started. And we can predict what's going to happen now. And we predicted what's happening with Michael Horowitz and so on and so forth. We also predicted, unfortunately, what's happening with we like the good part of the new thing coming out of the House Intelligence Committee, but we don't like the bad part. Bad part, they didn't find that the Democrats were connected in any way to the Russians and Russian collusion during the election. Are they stupid and blind? The Nunes memo, Nunes stood there and said, and let Conaway say what he said, that was for a political motivation. As we told you, the Congress is political.
Yeah.
It's about the job they want. It isn't about honesty or justice. It's about the next job they want. And so SES, they don't have to worry about their next job. They don't have to get elected. They can't get fired. They get a bonus every year from the people who are their underlings that they may or may not have even been in charge of or supervised. They don't know about the agency that they're in charge of. They stop the executive branch from doing its job. They work against America because they are all in bed with the corporate world, as we've just described. And when you talk about SES, you are talking about people who, yes, they were in the corporate world, and you can bet your bottom dollar. You can truly bet your bottom dollar that they get paid off coming both ways, and that when they make regulations, they tell those loopholes to the lawyers and the corporations to take advantage of them, and they get paid off for it, and they can never be fired.
Right.
And they go from one agency to the next, stealing whatever they can. And this is all, and literally, these are top secret people.
This is the corruption grease of Washington.
Yes.
That's all we're looking at here. And they all get paid to do this, and so that's why they keep doing it. So President Trump has a huge opportunity here, but we can't let this institution continue. It's ruining our republic.
The FBI investigators down in Little Rock right now investigating Clinton Foundation, doesn't matter what they find. Their bosses are SES.
Yeah.
The SES didn't stop. Notice no SES members are mentioned that they were part of the Comey group. Where's the SES members then? They don't stop the deep state. They only stop anyone trying to stop the deep state, and then the shadow government comes forth. And when they do, as we can see, we knew this all along because you can see the actions of individuals doing these things like a John Podesta. But what you don't see is that the organization is so ensconced that the President Obama himself is literally responsible for creating a shadow government for Hillary Clinton, which would have been unstoppable. And now a bunch of those people have quit because they know that they have wrongdoing. That's why we see 17,000 people from SES and all over the place. They all quit. Why? Those are usually the guilty ones. And the most guilty ones are like a Donna Brazil or a Jonathan Weiner or an Alexander Downer. They all come out and they tell us their alibi, don't they? Or they're a James Clapper. They go onto the news and again and again and again tell us different lies, expecting that your iPhone and your computers wipe your brain clean every day and that you don't remember that he lied the opposite last time he was on the news. So that's what we get. We'll probably find out that James Clapper could have been an SES member. These are people who went out and came back, go out and came back. James Clapper's another one. He went into his own private intelligence agencies. All these people leave and go to private intelligence agencies. And do you think they don't share what they know? That is stupid. Of course they share what they know. For instance, industrial espionage. Watch the rotation of CEOs between the big car companies 10 years ago, and you watched the way that their design simply went from one car company to the next.
Right.
Yet they signed non-disclosure agreements. They said they wouldn't do it. That's a lie. And so now we see China trying to steal our technology And people get shocked when we say Lenovo has Chinese chips in it, which are spying on you. What don't you know about that? You trusted buying something from China? Well, I assure you that in our agencies for trade, the SEC people are making a fortune on the side every time one of these deals go down. And that's why
75% of the Securities and Exchange Commission are SES, according to that chart.
That's what I'm talking about. And I'll bet you the CFIUS members, I'll bet half of them, or certainly their close underlings, are SES members. And so CFIUS was getting ready to say yes to Broadcom buying Qualcomm. And then all of a sudden, Trump turned on them.
So when we talk about draining the swamp, this is the swamp. It has to be drained. This is it.
This is it. These people got to go.
Got their names, got their categories, got their job titles, got their departments. Everything's there.
Well,
plain sight.
In Detroit, the corruption was so bad in the education department that they said one time, okay, you want your check, folks? You got to come get it in person and bring a photo ID. You know how many checks they had at the end of that day? As I've said again and again, there are agencies and agencies and agencies Trump will never hear about that are ran by people who are in charge of it, who don't even report to their superiors. They're agencies that were started a long time ago, like SES in 1978, and no one even knew the parameters of SES until we opened up that can of worms, and now you have brought it out. So it is a truth bomb that simply needs to take out 9,158 people. Last count I checked, not a one of them is doing anything.